So, John Wick, Chapter 4, is another film where Keanu Reeves goes on a rampage, a killing spree, one of his longest ones yet, as he continues to fight against the High Table. So, I doubt it's going to surprise many when I tell everybody that this film has amazing fight scenes, amazing atmosphere, a great score, great tension, and a fantastic cast. I'm sure, like, that, you know, if you're a fan of the John Wick films, that should be what you expect at this point. And yet, it still amazes me. It's still just, you know, floors me that we're at the fourth film in John Wick's saga, and it's still brimming with incredible style and just over-the-top fight sequences and just bloody, brutal, elaborate sequences and just an incredible tone throughout. It still has the magic after all that time where at this point I could pretty much just declare like John Wick is like the perfect quadrilogy. Like every film in this I've loved, and including this one. So if you're curious, like because a lot of people are just gonna say, oh, John Wick is just a series of fight scenes, and it's a series of great fight scenes, but there's still a plot here. And Chapter 4 has, I think, the most interesting developments in this continuing story of Wick's seeking of vengeance and freedom. So, you know, quick little recap for those who aren't familiar with John Wick. So he's getting revenge for his, after his wife dies, his dog is killed, his car is stolen, goes after it, goes on a killing spree, and even when it feels like he's gotten back what he wants and proven his revenge, he goes even further. And after he goes further, the High Table targets him, and he becomes the most wanted hitman in the world. So everyone is after him. And Chapter 4 pretty much begins around at the same point in Chapter 3, where, you know, Wick is still on the run, he's still being pursued, and he's still fighting his way up the High Table. But he's got to fight a little bit smarter this time, for two reasons. One is because the High Table realized that, you know, John Wick can fight through anything. You know, Keanu Reeves, once again, total badass, just kills everyone in the room. And the High Table, realizing this, tries to find not just more ways to hire more assassins, but also more ways to kind of target what John Wick would value most in this world, which is they realize that John Wick can lay waste to tons of people, but his friends can't. They know that the concierge, not the concierge, the Continental hotel runner, Winston Scott, played by Ian McShane again. They know that he's an old guy. He can't really defend himself. So, of course, when the High Table comes after him and his concierge, once again played by Lance Reddick, that, you know, Wick is kind of leaving a trail of death. And this happens again when he ventures off to the Japanese version of the Continental, and it just so happens that the person there who runs that Continental is also an old friend of John Wick. And at that time, like, he makes the owner makes a tough call. It's like, do I defend John Wick, or do I just, you know, turn him in and save myself and save everyone? And his friend doesn't, because he realizes that, you know, Wick is not just fighting the High Table. He's fighting the High Table and its hierarchical reign over hitmen, where they feel like, you know, the higher-ups can do whatever they want, and there's very little punishment. And Wick is proving them wrong. So a lot of the people who have been in this business for a long time realize that, you know, yeah, like this is something worth fighting for, even if it feels like there's insurmountable odds. And then, of course, this leads to plenty of daring fight scenes, but also like conflicted fights about whether or not Wick is determined to continue on the fight. In particular, one of his old friends that's brought up in this film is Kane, a blind High Table assassin played by Donnie Yen. They have a history together, and Kane has a daughter that he wants to protect, and the High Table's threatening him that, you know, you can't have this life unless you go and kill John Wick. So he's got his reasons, and it's, you know, it's not going to be an easy battle for Wick once he kind of realizes this, especially since they're old friends. Another aspect that complicates this is there's a tracking bounty hunter called Mr. Nobody, played by Shamir Anderson, who it feels like this is like the villain that you'd love to see go down, just because this guy only operates on greed. Like he only, like, he doesn't kill John Wick. He basically tracks him down, gets a beat on him, and then contacts the high table saying, "Hey, I got this guy you're looking for. Why don't you up the bounty and I'll bring him in?" So for being so driven by greed, you feel like, okay, he's got it coming. But here's the thing: he's got a dog. He's got a dog assassin with him, and it's very much like the last film. Like, you remember with was it like Halle Berry's character? She had like those two dogs who constantly went after assassins by by biting them in the throat and biting them in the nuts. It's the same deal here, except there's a lot more biting of the nuts. In fact, Mr. Nobody trains his dog specifically to bite assassins by just saying nuts. And let's just say that there's a lot of scenes of dogs biting genitals in this film. A lot, in addition to all the other violent deaths and kills. So realizing all this, John Wick realizes that he has to fight more intelligently. He can't just, kill his way out of this. I mean, technically he can, but he's got to find the right way to kill and at the right time and under the rules of the high table, despite the fact that the high table does not play by the rules. So there's this great commentary on tackling hierarchical systems by trying to play by their rules, even though the system itself does not play by the rules. That even if you accomplish insurmountable odds, considering how many bodies that John Wick has killed over the course of these three films, and even in the fourth film, the body count is way, way, way high in this film. Even after all that, it feels like you have to do all this just to gain some sense of freedom and for a towering system just to leave you alone. And I feel like that it becomes much more apparent in this film more than the other films. I got like a theme as a whole. I think it works for John Wick, but it's more apparent in Chapter 4, specifically because like the last big multiple fighters, the last big fight scene with like multiple fighters coming into it is a scene where John Wick has to ascend like about 200 steps up to get to his final destination where he'll have his big showdown. And he just keeps getting his ass kicked. Like, it feels like he's almost to the top step and then literally just gets kicked all the way back down to the bottom all over again, and has to accomplish the impossible by being like beaten after an entire night of just getting stabbed and shot at and tossed and bruised and punched and nearly set aflame. And then he has to, get tossed down all the stairs and walk right back up again. And it's such a perfect like symbolism of like John Wick's, ever present climb to, conquer this unconquerable mountain of this hierarchical system. Okay, so that's like the bigger theme. But of course, the big thing that everyone is coming for this film, obviously the biggest draw, is the fight scenes. And there's a lot of them, and they're great. It's tough to explain, just like, I feel like I can only talk about this in like the highlights here. Like with John Wick, you get to see him do battle with nunchucks at one point. Like when he's going through the Japanese Continental, he gets a hold of some nunchucks and starts beating down assassins with them and actually killing them with it. And there's like I said, there's great like tongue-in-cheek moments within like the violence. Like at one point, there's a split-second realization where Wick is staring down two assassins that kind of look at him with this kind of look like, wait, is he really going to use nunchucks to kill us? And then he proceeds to like, yes, he is going to kill people with nunchucks. Donnie Yen has some great moments as well, in particular because I love the way that he fights with kind of like this almost kind of like Zatoichi style, like, like the blind swordsman, the way he carries around a cane and just like slices people up. I love how during one sequence, in order to track down assassins, he uses an electronic doorbell system. Like, he just attaches like automatic doorbells to things to reveal to reveal people's locations and then gun them down with ease, which is a lot of fun to watch. Plus, Donnie Yen is just so amazing in this role. Like he bites back hard when like the high table threatens him. He gets some of like the coolest lines. Like at one point he's threatened to like take part in a poker game, and he just, he makes like, dude, I'm a blind guy, and you want me to play poker? Really? That's what you're doing? And you get so many great lines like that. There's a lot of other cast members I forgot to mention here. Of course, I can't forget Bill Skarsgård as the new Marquis of the High Table, who is just the perfect kind of smarmy villain, who takes delight in pain and pleasure, in the pleasures of pain, because he realizes that he controls other people. He's very much aware of what Wick is fighting against and wants to squash it at any chance he get. And Bill Skarsgård is just so great at being this insidious villain who you can't wait to see John Wick like take this guy down. Just because he's such a scummy guy. He's like a coward. He gets everyone to do his battles for him. Even in like the final showdown, he literally has someone else do his fighting for him. That you can't wait to see him go down. So he's a perfect villain, especially when you know how much power he has and that he knows how to wield it in the right way to piss off John Wick. In this film, I think more than any other, there's a lot of like globetrotting as well. Like, we go to New York and see that Continental. We go to Japan and see another Continental. We stop in Berlin for a nightclub fight scene, and then like they have the big showdown in Paris, which there's an elaborate fight scene around the Arc de Triomphe. Like if you're familiar, like the Arc de Triomphe, it has like that roundabout, and there's an entire fight scene where it's just in the roundabout. So John Wick is fighting assassins in oncoming traffic and keep in mind, like nearly everyone in this city wants to kill him. So it's oncoming traffic of everybody who wants to kill him, and they're all wielding guns. They're all steering towards him. They're all smashing into him. And it's just such like pulse pounding and just so beautifully crafted. Like the amount of planning that would have to go into that scene is just astounding. Like it's mind-boggling to like, to fathom like how they approach this scene of like, okay, John goes here and then he hides behind this car and then this car smashes into this one and then he has to go to this lane and then, there's a showdown between these two lanes. It's just like there's so much planning that had to go into it that it's amazing to watch it unfold. And then of course you get that great shot once like John leaves the scene and you see just how many bodies he's mounted in the Arc de Triomphe. But the other thing I was going to talk about was the Berlin nightclub scene, which, I mean, it feels like quintessential at this point. Like, you've got to have a nightclub fight scene in order to have, like, that kind of, like, neo-noir John Wick style. And it goes, like, over the top for this one, just because you've Scott Adkins playing this character called Killa. And he's a huge guy. He's got, like, golden teeth. He's just, like, such a... like he has this like cackle to him, and he's just like this towering big guy. Like he looks like a Dick Tracy villain almost. And I think I mostly attribute that just like to his size, the way he's depicted, and the fact that like his office looks like a combination between like a rave and like a set from Blade Runner, because he's got like the neon lights going, but then he's also kind of got like the smoky barroom style, and then he's got like the giant fan overhead. Just amazing attention to detail in this place. And then when you actually do it to like him fighting Killa in the nightclub, which I love the fact that like the nightclub doesn't disperse until John finally kills Killa, because up until that point, like everyone is just kind of like dancing, they're fine with it. I think just because they're like, you know what, fine. There's bad guy, there's John Wick. Let Killa handle it, because everyone just keeps dancing while John Wick is killing assassin after assassin. Which is just like, I find that fascinating, because as weird as it is, it kind of plays into the dynamic of John Wick's world, where everyone is obsessed with money and they're able to get away with, all this violence that it feels like it's just so commonplace that barely anyone cares, because like oh, should we interfere? Should we run? John Wick is shooting up people. Whatever. There's a bounty on his head. People got to work. So everyone just kind of treats it as this casual nature, especially when you have like the high table coming on over the radio to announce like, hey, by the way, John Wick's over out at the Arc de Triomphe if y'all want to swing on by and try to kill him. Which they track throughout the film while still playing, classic rock to go with all of it. Although I don't think it's quite classic rock. There's some like covers, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, just great casting. And of course, like worth mentioning is also Clancy Brown playing the Harbinger, one of the high-ranking operatives of the High Table. He doesn't have much to do, but sometimes it's just nice to see Clancy Brown. Like, he brings a little bit of that, like, that deep voice class to see it there with his big white beard, and I love the little disfigurement he's got on his face, and this very, like, serious, like, dark tone that he's got to himself, where it's just, like, where it feels like Bill Skarsgård is, like, someone that John Wick could kill, but despite how old Clancy Brown is, like, you listen to that voice, like, I don't know if I want to take him down. So, and then, of course, another highlight worth mentioning here is, of course, Lawrence Fishburne as the Bowery King. He doesn't have as much to do in this film. He more or less just kind of like tags along with John Wick and kind of provides him with his material. He's more or less kind of like Q from James Bond at this point. Just like, hey, I got, because that's pretty much all he does. Like, hey, check it out. I got you a new suit. I got you a new gun. Pretty cool, right? But he does chew up the few scenes that he has. Which is great, especially for like the big opening scene with Lawrence Fishburne just announcing himself and just cackling so much that it's just like, oh, that's not only the perfect way to open the film, that's the perfect way to use Lawrence Fishburne in a film. In addition to everyone else who gets used, you're like who else? You have Hiroyuki Sanada as Koji, the Osaka manager I mentioned. He's great for his fight scenes, especially with the Japanese Continental, with all its like, they have so many weapons in that place. They have swords, they have guns, they have arrows, they have nunchucks, like I said, they have blades. So much fun stuff happens during that opening fight scene. You have you kind of a very brief role by Rina Sawayama as Akira, Koji's daughter. She gets to fight along John Wick for a few scenes, and she also provides a good counterpoint about how John needs to consider the wake that he's leaving in all this. So everyone who's close to John Wick feels like they have like a huge role to play in this. That by the time you get to the finale, it unfolds beautifully, and just like, for as long as this film goes on for, like, I believe it's like almost 3 hours, like 169 minutes. There wasn't a moment of this that I was bored. And of course, that's attributed to like the extended fight scenes, which go on for a long time, but just like you're impressed by how they unfold and like, how much they span. Just like the entire fight scenes around Paris, where they're just like, where John is running and gunning into like abandoned buildings and the Arc de Triomphe, and running through churches and just all over the place. Just great set pieces. In particular, there's one scene that I loved. There's a great scene where John gets a hold of one of the assassins who has a gun that essentially shoots bullets that explode into fire upon impact. And he's running through this abandoned building, just gunning down all these assassins. And the camera pulls up to like this overhead view that follows John through like each room while you're looking directly down at him. And it's one of those shots where I'm just like, oh my God, this looks exactly like Hotline Miami. It's, for anyone who's played the video game Hotline, it's exactly like the perspective of that video game. It even has like the same kind of layout that you would expect from like Hotline Miami, and like the running and gunning and watching characters flee and fire, and with like the blood splatter on the floor. It's just like, I'm not saying that like I don't want to like explicitly say that like director Chad Stahelski was like, gaining inspiration from Hotline Miami, but it certainly feels like it. It felt like a very Hotline Miami moment there, especially for how long we hold with like that overhead shot. So yeah, I doubt there's much more I can say here. Like, if you are a John Wick fan, this is, and I don't want to make this sound condescending too, because it's more of the same in that it's what you would expect from a John Wick film, but also better developing its story about, John's continuing nature of revenge against the High Table, and questioning where, how to get to that point. And it looks amazing. Just the atmosphere, the fights are great. Keanu Reeves still has, a lot of fun in this role. He has a lot of tongue-in-cheek moments of just like, yeah, getting back up. And it's so much fun. I don't know how else to describe this, because like I don't want to, like, I mean, saying more of the same kind of sounds like a condemnation, but the past few films have just been so brilliant and fantastic that I doubt that saying it's more of the same is going to be condescending. Because really, with all four films considered, this is an amazing, like, action quadrilogy. And I feel like I have to say that because, like, how many quadrilogies can you think of that are just like, that are perfect? Where like every entry you love so much, and that it continues on, with each entry it gets better and better and better. And sure enough, chapter 4 continues on the tradition, and it's better than chapter 3, and chapter 3 was pretty damn good. So yeah, in case it didn't need to be said, I absolutely love the hell out of John Wick chapter 4.